prophet says for us today, "Here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, whom my soul delights. I put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry or lift up his voice or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a dimly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow faint or be crushed until he has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for his teaching. Thus says God, the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people upon it and spirit to those who walk in it. I am the Lord. I have called you in righteousness. I have taken you by the hand and kept you. I have given you as a covenant to the people, a light to the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison those who sit in darkness. I am the Lord. That is my name. My glory I give to no other, nor my praise to idols. See, the former things have come to pass, and new things I now declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them." May God add a blessing to the reading of God's word today. Amen. And this morning, we're God's servant. We are here in this world to bring forth the change that God has called for, to live in a way that God has set forth. See, God had called, again, Israel, and just to highlight this for a moment, I want us to understand who Isaiah is talking to so we can understand how Isaiah talks to us today. Isaiah was a prophet at the time when Israel, when God's children were coming back from the Babylonian captivity. Again, real quick, going back, real quick history update. The central story in the Old Testament, the central identifying moment for God's children of Israel was when God liberated them out of Egypt, right? The Exodus, when Moses led them out of Egypt through the Red Sea into what? The Promised Land, right? When God brought God's children out of Egypt, that is the crowning moment found in the Old Testament. That is the identifying moment when, in essence, Israel gets into its understanding of self as a nation. But what we often have to understand is that when that took place, Moses wasn't walking around with his tablet or with a piece of paper writing all this as it happened before him, but it was recounted much later for the people of God to remember. In other words, while they were going through other moments of history, when they felt like they were being oppressed and taken down, they had to remember what God had done before. Don't forget how God brought our ancestors out of Egypt. It's always critical that you remember what God has done before, so you're reminded what God can do now. To know that God has done it before. God has done it before, and if God can do it before, God can what? Do it again. Do it again. Do it now. If God healed before, guess what? God can heal again. If God provided before, guess what? God can provide. One of the problems, our kids don't even know their own history. To know what God has done before, to trust what God can do now. And so God's people constantly remind themselves of what God can do again. And so now the people of God have survived what was the Babylonian captivity when Jerusalem had been laid to waste and the most prominent and professionals were carried off to serve in Babylon. And now they're coming back. And Isaiah is speaking to them. And here's the key part for us to see and understand. God is speaking to those who have been traumatized, those who've been bruised and battered. Let's just put it this way. God is speaking to those who are hurt. And guess what God says? You're hurt, so don't go hurting other people. Because if you recall, we say it a lot. Hurt people, hurt people. Heal people, heal people. See, that's what is so powerful in this. What I love so much is what may have been just glanced over so quickly. Isaiah says, he will not cry and lift up his voice to servant, make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he won't break, and a dimly burning wick he will not quench. You probably Bruce Reed. Sounds like some actor, right? Bruce Reed, right? Bruce Reed. Well, a Bruce Reed is a reed. Let's think of a branch out of the ground. A Bruce Reed is a reed or branch that's already broken. It's already bruised. It's already been damaged. It's always already a damaged being, a damaged person. And a dimly wick, a dimly burning wick is a wick that's what? Flickering. It barely has any life left in it. It's just barely holding on. What's being said here is that my servant, when we think about it as Jesus, or think about it as us, my servant will not break somebody who's already damaged. My servant will not extinguish somebody who's already, the wick is going down. Because we certainly live in a world that if you are weak, if you are without, if you are lacking, this world will destroy you and not protect you. It will look down on you and not seek to lift you up. But yet, we're called to be different. We're called as those who have been disoriented, or those who have been traumatized, to not continue the trauma on others. To break the cycle of this world. It's a dog eat what? Dog world. It's a world what goes around, comes around. Where you get what you deserve, where you fight fire with fire. With that scene of strength. But God says, no, something different. Something different for us. I did jury duty this last week. Anybody here done jury duty before? Mm-hmm. Anybody ever served on a jury? Mm-hmm. All right, so some have experienced this as well. I tried to get out of it. I tried. I thought I had my way out. I was jury number 58, and there were 65 of us. And they had to find 12 jurors and 2 alternates. And so I sat in this courtroom. We were called in. We got there 8:30 in the morning. We didn't get called up to the court till 3 in the afternoon. So we get up there, and I'm thinking, I've got to find a way. I can get out of this, I'm sure. But as I had posted on Facebook, I was in a jury pool of the island of misfit toys. We were so jacked up. Everybody had all these issues. Folks who, people in law enforcement, people in cars, people who don't like police, people that believe police too much, people that have religious beliefs, everybody had these reasons. And then the funny is what the guy said, right next to me, the dude right next to me, he sits down and tells me, I can't hear. And I said, what? He said, I can't hear. You got to tell me the judge is saying. And he kept going like this. I got swimmer's ear. I got fluid in my ear. And so he's sitting there, and the judge is saying, if you've ever been incarcerated, stand up. So he stood up, and she's like, have you been incarcerated? He's like, what? And she said, have you been incarcerated? What? What? And I was like, have you been incarcerated? No, I've never been incarcerated. Well, sit down. Oh, sorry. And then he sits down. And he kept saying, I can't hear. But, so I kept having to tell him, the judge saying, but at one point, I was like, man, this is a mess. I whispered it, like, man, he was like, I know, this is really something. It's miracle here, right? No. Even the judge wasn't by, but they let him out. And so they're getting through, and the defendant was dismissing people left and right, and they were on number like 53, and there's still 7 seats left. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get jury duty. And sure enough, I was set for this trial. And I don't want to go into details of the case today for time's sake, but it was a criminal case. And it involved a young man who was arrested for a very minor offense, who felt he was being targeted, profiled by the police, and got upset and began to fight the arrest. In the process, the officer got hurt. And what started as a minor ticket of $50 turned into second-degree assault of a police officer. And so we got to decide his fate. And the problem is, it happened. As the law is written, he broke the law. But one of the things we talked about as a jury, because it was tearing us up, because we all watched this young man, the video they had of him in the encounter, and watching him in court, that this young man was very troubled. In fact, the whole time he was in court, for the whole 2 days, he had no family there. Nobody was there with him. He was there, he's about 25, 26, in his mid-20s. He was there all by himself. And all you had to do was look at him, and you could see that mentally he was dealing with some real challenges, some real illness. Honestly, he didn't need to be in a prison. He needed to be in a hospital. He needed some mental health to understand about what happens in life. But what is so sad again, and again, we were caught in a very difficult situation because he did break the law as it's written. But once again, as we as a jury deliberated, talked about it, we watched how here's another young man who the system is just going to crush. It's just going to crush him because he didn't have any resources. He had a public defender. He had nothing to help support him. And once again, he has an obvious mental illness. The judge told us she will have him evaluated, which we hope will give him the help he needs. But this system of the world just crushes people, and especially for those who have no resources to protect themselves. And then the rest of us live in fear that we're going to lose our resources and we're going to get crushed. So we're going to hoard what we have, even if it means you have nothing. A bruised reed he will not break. A dimly burning wick he will not quench. We're called again, as people of God, to be that servant that cares for those who the world no longer cares about. To be those who live in a way that God has called us to live. To end the cycles of trauma and be a place of healing for everyone. A place of restoration that is able to take place. Because again, that's what the servant is called to do. And I think one of the first things we have to do ourselves is be willing to admit that we ourselves are broken as well. One of the faults of church sometimes is, church, you have to put on what was called your Sunday what? Best, right? And you have to wear your Sunday best because it's church. Well, what if you wore your Wednesday worst? Because guess what? God still loves you. And we spend so much time trying to hide our brokenness and our weakness that it becomes exhausting for us. Well, when is the last time you saw, I love how we do pictures of pastors and their families. When was the last time you saw a pastor and their family on a picture, a portrait of their family, just all looking all haggard and worn out? No, we have to make sure we are presenting ourselves as if already we're perfect. In fact, they say social media takes such a toll on us because the things we post on Facebook are only our good side, and people don't get to see what? The bad side, the real side. And then if your life is going through struggles, and you look at all your friends' life on Facebook, and they're all doing great, and you think you're doing worse, that causes a serious dilemma for you. Instead of realizing that even those that have all the best showing, guess what? They got some stuff too. We all have something going. And that's the delight of the gospel. The gospel allows us to be who we are, even in our brokenness. Because I love how here in the book of 2 Corinthians, Paul says again, but we have this treasure in clay jars. So it may be made clear that this extraordinary power belongs to God and does not come from us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. We have this treasure in clay jars. It's speaking about the spirit that dwells in each and every one of us. Because like we are seen as the dust from the ground, the clay that God has formed, this clay that God made into humanity and breathed the breath of life, that's the treasure in clay jars, which is what you and I are. Now, how many of us eat out of clay pottery at home? How many have dishes made of clay? We don't. You know why? Clay breaks too easy. Clay cracks. Clay gets holes in it. Clay has a way of not holding and being maintained, which is what's so powerful where it says, but we have this treasure in clay jars that we're clay vessels in essence that God dwells in, which brings us meaning, but the meaning isn't simply from us ourselves. And everybody knows that a clay jar cracks easy. And a pot that gets cracked is called what? A crack pot. Well, guess what? We're a gathering of crack pots today. And I don't care what title they put in front of you. You could be Reverend Crack Pot, Pastor Crack Pot, Bishop Crack Pot, Cardinal Crack Pot, Pope Crack Pot. No matter what, it's a crack pot. It's just simply a clay vessel that God dwells in. With brokenness, and here's the beauty God says to us today as I close, is that the thing about where we're broken, well, wait, let me do this first. Zachary wakes up every Saturday, not school days anymore, he's got that down. But my son wakes up every Saturday way too early. 6 o'clock, he's up. And when he's up, no, I'm up. Michelle goes back to sleep. So what I do every night when Zach goes to sleep, I do every night, especially on Saturdays, is I go over his windows and I make sure the curtains are closed completely. Because his room gets the morning sun. And I make sure his curtains, I don't want there to be the smallest crevice. I don't want the smallest crack to appear, because that is exactly where what? That's where the light comes in. Well, guess what? What you learn in life is that it's through our brokenness, it's through the cracks in our own life, it's in our own humanity that actually is where the light of God shows for us. But we have been called to be a light to the nations. But the light won't come out as long as you try to hold it in to make it think it's all about you. But letting God shine out through us as God's servant to bring light to the world is what we're called to do. To uplift and love one another. So yes, Jesus is God's servant. But guess what? So are you and I. Amen? Amen. Amen.